Hey everybody, this is Carson from 3D Joe's, and today I'm going to do a quick review of Ed Morrill's Package Design and Brand Identity book. Now this came from his packaging agency, which was out of New York City, Coleman, LiPuma, Segal, and Morrill. The reason I've been working with Ed Morrill over the last several years is he was an integral player when it came to creating branding and packaging for G.I. Joe. Not only G.I. Joe, a Real American Hero, but going back to 1970 with the reinvention of G.I. Joe as the adventure team. So Ed Morrill gave me this book several years ago. I'm working on editing his interview now, and I was going to film some of this for B-roll. And so I figured you guys might like to see a quick walkthrough of the book. So this is something that they would give to potential clients to kind of show, what kind of work that they've done for other companies. And usually most of the stuff you'll see here is consumer packaged goods. Now the cover's gloss, there's a little light reflection, but I think the rest of the book will be matte, so that should be better. So this was created by Coleman, LiPuma, Segal, and Morrill. It's 38 case studies of strategic imagery for the marketplace. So they're mainly a consumer packaged goods brand and packaging company out of Manhattan. Now Ed Morrill worked with Hasbro on G.I. Joe and many, many other key brands from 1969 to 1989. He helped with the relaunch of G.I. Joe as Adventure Team in 1970, and he worked with them up through the 80s, where they eventually brought the rest of the work in-house. So you will not see much toy work in this book, and that's because there was a stigma in Manhattan, and packaging firms in particular, around working with toy companies. Much like Larry Hama and Jim Shooter would say, there was a stigma around creating toy-based comic books back in the early 80s. G.I. Joe really changed that paradigm. Certainly for comic book publishing, G.I. Joe became the most popular Marvel comic book in the 1980s, and so people don't really look at IP-related comic books as second or third tier work anymore. They certainly did back in the early 80s. Similarly, packaging companies were kind of snobby when it came to toy company work. They didn't see it as highbrow enough, and toy companies had a reputation for not paying well enough or on time. Now, Ed Morrill said that was never a problem with Hasbro, that they always paid on time and they always paid fair rates, maybe a little lower than their consumer packaged good clients, but still fair. It became an issue kind of in the late 80s. Anyway, I won't go too in-depth on that. So again, he gave this back to me in 2014, it looks like. This was, he says, thought you might be interested in a bit of package design history. This book was published back in the day when digital imaging was in its infancy and we were on the bleeding edge. It was during this time that we were doing all that work for Hasbro. Although G.I. Joe does not get mentioned, he was, as you know, a big part of my focus and my responsibilities. Thank you so much for your great work and passion in keeping G.I. Joe alive today. For all the world's fans and collectors, very best regards, Ed. Ed's a good friend of mine by now. We've been chatting for, a decade now, which is amazing to think of. So anyway, this is 38 case studies. I'm going to shoot through them pretty quickly. I think there's only one that you'll be particularly interested in. Let's see. There's the kind of the list, and you'll be interested to see Transformers, which will be here on page 8 in just a little bit. Brand equity and research, CLS&M philosophy of design. There's our man Ed Morrill right there. Some of the managers down below. That's Coleman. And this was a very, very successful company. I think they were eventually acquired by Omnicom. Don't hold me to that. But so mainly consumer packaged goods, as you can see. Some brands that you'll certainly know, like Purina, for example. We all know Purina. Pyrex, everybody knows Pyrex. Everybody knows Fancy Feast. These are big brands. Hey, there's Ed Morrill doing a presentation for Fancy Feast. Talk about some of the design decisions made. Ortega, I think we all know that. This is definitely mocked up. That is not in the photograph. That's funny. Ortega. Aunt Jemima. Unfortunately, they took her off the package. Well, don't get into too many politics, but I think that's ridiculous. She sold her image, and that's a proud thing. She made a lot of money. Deer Park. Everybody knows Deer Park water. Wishbone. I don't remember buying bottled water back in the 80s, but Deer Park was already at it. Healthy Sensation. I do remember that. Konica. I remember those cameras. And so thank you to Ed Morrill for sharing this book with me, for sitting down and doing the interviews for hours. I think we filmed for 4 hours. Here's a section everybody will want to see. The Transformers by Hasbro, obviously. I'll read it to you guys. One of the toy industry's most successful new product introductions of all time is the Transformers line of robot action figures. They are indeed more than meets the eye. As a totally unique product concept in the United States, the packaging graphics have to communicate the dual nature of each product. A car transforming into a futuristic robot and back again, with exciting action-filled images appealing to children ages 5 and up. Extensive use of airbrushed illustrations combined with close-up photography of the step-by-step transformation process communicate the play value of these toys in one, of 3 toys in one: durability of die-cast vehicles, the fantasy of extraterrestrial robots, and the intrigue of puzzles. Working on an incredibly tight time schedule, even by toy industry standards, CLS&M created logotypes, symbols, and high-tech graphics which effectively preempted the category, enabling Hasbro Industries to gain a commanding sales advantage in an extremely competitive environment. Transformers rapidly became the hot item, highly collectible by children of all ages for their novelty, ingenuity, and craftsmanship. So there's your Transformer spread. I will not be reading the rest of these to you. Reynolds Wrap, everybody knows that. Define a category with that name. So yeah, this is all, consumer packaged goods. I believe that's Owen Coleman. So Ed would continue working with CLS&M up until about 1993, 1994. Before retiring into doing his own thing with digital imaging and photography, working under the brand Morrill Support, Morrill. If you'd like to have a look at his website to see what he's been up to after retiring from the consumer packaged goods branding and packaging field. Snowboard. Oh, this is a cool photo. I remember seeing Ed doing presentations in front of this on some video footage that I have. Yeah, so I think I'm seeing Owen Coleman in almost every photo right here. Owen Coleman is the one that basically convinced Ed to join forces with CLS&M, and I kind of get the feeling he was the big dog. He's got a book on Apple Books if you'd like to look for Owen Coleman's design book. I think it's Building Brands or something kind of generic sounding to that effect. Castrol, everybody knows Castrol. Everybody knows Robitussin. Rub some of that tussin on it. Some fun stand-up comedy. I think it's Chris Rock. Flea and Tick stuff, Gillette. Yeah, I mean, they were doing some big brands. So they also worked on Transformers, G.I. Joe, Visionaries. He mentioned Weebles Wobble, but they don't fall down. They worked on, I believe, dozens of Hasbro brands. Unfortunately, in their case study book, the only one that got a shout out was Transformers. But he worked on G.I. Joe specifically from 1969 again to 1989. And there's our buddy Ed Morrill right there. Let's get a little zoom in on that. And there's Mr. Morrill right there. So thank you once again, Ed, for sharing your time and your stories with me. I do cherish our friendship and all the lessons that I've learned from you. And I look forward to sharing your interview. Talk with you soon.